We are so grateful you continue to listen to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. We have a very special week for you. And the question we want to ask is, what are the things you do, not your partner?
Not your spouse.
What are the things you do that mess up your relationships?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to call this week How to Ruin Your Marriage. And if you know how to ruin it, you'll know how to help it.
Yeah, if you can recognize what it is that you are doing, it's really always easy to see what the other person's doing wrong. But if you can take responsibility and see what you are doing, then you get to take responsibility for that. It's easier for you to fix it. It's easier for you to know how to make it better. And to me, it seems like one of the first things is you have to want to, right? And I want to start off by saying, I am incredibly lucky. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on film. I'm not saying that because I'm on a podcast. I think I'm an amazing person. I really do. But I'm not an easy person. I'm not easy. So I'm intense. I'm challenging at times. And I have the perfect partner. I really do. You are kind and thoughtful and grounding, and you don't react. You are an amazing human being.
So this is our second marriage, both of us. And
I figured it out.
We know how to mess things up.
Yeah.
And if you know how to mess them up, then if you're paying attention, you actually can make magic.
Can I say
and
something?
I think of the 13 years we've been together, it's been magical.
Yeah.
And I love when you said the only way I'm running is if I'm chasing you.
You're not going anywhere till death do us part.
It's connected.
So,
but I want to do it in these 4 podcasts in this week to really look at our 4 circles. And in the first podcast, we'll talk about the biological things you do to mess up your relationships. And then we'll talk about the psychological things you do, and then we'll talk about the social things you do, and even the spiritual things that you do. So biologically, what are the things people do to
drink
ruin
too much,
their relationships?
Drink too much, do drugs, watch pornography, in my opinion, if they're addicted to it and not paying attention to their partner and they're not present. Those are things that I have seen, we've seen, right? Where people are not present in their marriages, where they're not their best selves, where they're not showing up. I guess the pornography part would be not biological.
The what?
The pornography part would not be biological, but
totally
drinking too much.
Biological in the sense that it can be addictive, that if you're not careful, it can actually shrink your frontal lobe.
Right.
That
you're comparing your marriage to something not real.
Expectations that are not real. And but when I think of biology, I think of you had a head trauma and no one's assessed it. And you are acting badly because your frontal lobes or your temporal lobes have been hurt. And so a biological way to screw up your relationships
does not treat your brain.
Is that you have a brain that's not functioning right, and you don't get the help you need.
Yeah, depression and anxiety are also things, OCD are also things I've actually seen people who have, called me and said, hey, I need to come in because they are struggling with depression, anxiety, OCD, and it's destroying their marriages.
And those are, at least in part,
biological.
Yeah. And so I like what you said. So drugs and alcohol as we come close to the 4th of July.
Well, and how many domestic violence situations have you seen? Drug and alcohol, and I mean, that's the trigger, right? That's the thing that sets it off, is your frontal lobes are down. When you drink alcohol, when you do drugs, it affects your frontal lobes. It affects your judgment, your impulse control. Someone says something that makes you angry where you normally be able to control it. The next thing you know, you're screaming, yelling, out of control, domestic violence occurs. It's terrible.
I often ask people when I lecture, how many of you are married? And then, half the people raise their hand, and I go, is it helpful for you to say everything you think in your marriage? And
Everyone laughs.
everybody laughs, and they're shaking their head. No, it's not helpful. Yet when you drink alcohol,
You say more of what you think. Yeah.
the first thought in your head tends to get out. And
not in a
even
nice
if you
way.
don't believe the thought,
Yeah.
it can damage you. It can hurt you.
Yeah.
And so alcohol is involved in more divorces, in my experience as a psychiatrist over the last 40 years, than virtually any other substance. Also, this is something people might not know. If you didn't sleep well the night before, if you get less than 7 hours of sleep at night, you have lower overall blood flow to your frontal lobes, which then means more bad decisions.
And I know you guys have experienced this. I certainly have. So we had so much going on for that, like a week in our house, visitors, whatever. And I just didn't sleep for like 3 nights in a row. And I just woke up foggy, not feeling well. And it's just like, fortunately we know this about each other. And but I just got up and I was just like, I don't want to do what I have to do today. And I just, there was nothing, we didn't get in a fight or anything. And there was not even an argument, but my brain was not happy. I was not having happy thoughts. And then I got 3 nights of sleep, woke up, and I literally, the first thought out of my, in my head, and the first words out of my mouth were, wow, I feel so good. I'm so happy. I mean, it's just the difference when you get that sleep, how your brain processes. So I know you guys know what I'm talking about.
And, we've all talked about the bright mind's risk factors, but, quickly, if you have low blood flow to your brain, you're going to have more impulse control and less empathy. So if you want to screw up your relationships, never think of things from the other person's point of view.
Right. Just be selfish.
That'll ruin it. Retirement and aging, the older you get, the less active your brain is, unless you're super serious, unless you're a brain warrior. So you have to be careful. I turned 65 this year, and I walk a lot.
Stay busy
to keep my brain
Volunteering
healthy.
is a good thing.
And I take my supplements, and I'm learning new things. Inflammation. If you have inflammation in your body, you're more likely to have depression and dementia, which means when you're depressed, and you remember when you were depressed.
Oh yeah, I couldn't think about anybody but myself, because you can't.
It's like your brain's in a tunnel, and the tunnel has no windows and no doors. Dark, and your partner gets sad too, and they get lonely because you disconnected.
Well, it's not intentional, but you become self-centered because it's painful. When you're in pain, you become self-centered. So.
And then we talked about head trauma and getting it treated. Toxins could be where the alcohol is. Mind storms, which is a new concept you'll hear from me, but it's basically one of your temporal lobes is not working right. And you can have mood instability, irritability, temper problems. People often get diagnosed with bipolar. They're not. They have their temporal lobes that aren't working right, often from a head trauma. Getting that taken care of. If your hormones are not right, your relationships are not right.
They file for divorce more than any other age group.
Or PCOS.
Yeah.
That when
you think like a guy.
Testosterone's high, you can be more irritable and
I had PCOS.
hard to attach. So glad we got that treated for you. If you have low blood sugar, so there's this great study that they took 107 couples and they measured their blood sugar right before bed. And then they gave them voodoo dolls. And they said, we want you to express your feelings about your partner by putting pins in the dolls. And the people who had the lowest blood sugar had more than twice the number of pins in the dolls.
Yeah.
And Tana has this hangry thing.
So hangry. So bad.
And
he just looks at me and doesn't say a word and immediately goes somewhere where I can get food. It's just a thing that
Right. So,
And my daughter's
from
the
a
same way.
biological standpoint, how do you mess up a relationship? Is you don't think about or care about or take care of your brain, which is absolutely essential if you want to have a great relationship.
One thing you mentioned was point of view, and one thing that I really like that we do, because we're not perfect. We have disagreements, and we've had some sticky arguments in the past. Fortunately, not a lot of them, but we have. And what I like that we do, everybody argues differently, and it's really important to know how you argue and how you guys communicate. One thing I like that we do is we're both willing to get an argument, step back and go our separate ways for 15 or 20 minutes, because that's what it takes me. It takes me. You need to know that. If you stay in someone's face, if you just stay there and just keep at them, but they're a person who needs a little time to process, I'm a person who needs a little time to process. Give me 15 or 20 minutes to go to my corner. Let me think about it. Let me think about your point of view. I will generally come back and go, I'm really sorry for this. This is how I feel about this. But if you stay in someone's face who needs that time, it's not usually going to be a good outcome. I can tell you from my perspective, it wouldn't be. And vice versa.
And I call it the bathroom technique. That if somebody's stuck on something and they're just not letting you go, tell them you have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I like that.
Virtually nobody will argue. And even if you don't have to go to the bathroom, go there for just a few minutes to give the argument space for people's singulates to calm down so that you can shift into what is the goal in my relationship. Does my behavior fit the goal I have?
So
okay.
What's really interesting, though, Chloe and I, my daughter, so it's really interesting for you guys to know personality types, because where you and I don't have this problem, Chloe and I were butting heads really hard. She's a very strong-willed child. I would need time to go sort of process things, but I couldn't figure out why that would literally just cause her to flip out and send her up a tree. Finally, now she's older and we've been able to figure this out. To her, that feels like she has this abandonment issue. She feels like she's being abandoned somehow. When we were able to figure this out, and I was able to explain to her why I do it and how she needs me to not go away, but I need her to give me space, right? Really important to understand those dynamics.
And we'll talk about communication in the social. But what's coming up? So what are the things you're doing? I hope you answered that question. What are the things you're doing to ruin your relationships? Take responsibility and then post that.
And tag us.
Yeah. Brain Warriors Way podcast. And then share it on your social media. As we grow this podcast, Brain Warriors recruit other Brain Warriors so that you're creating your own network of people to support you on this healing
And we
journey.
would be grateful if you've learned something, if you go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, if you have learned anything, we would be so grateful if you would write that and give us a review.
And also leave your questions. Stay with us.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code PODCAST10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.